sitting there that moment and just taking in the fact that these folks join me on this crazy ride / experiment adventure and have their own thoughts and their own energy around where we'll be that in many ways superseded my own was such a gift.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. How do you build and grow a team within a joy-centered and decolonized business? To help us answer this question, I brought none other than Thea Monyeé. I'm going to ask listeners who haven't already discovered Thea Monyeé's work to go listen to the Shaping the Shift podcast and explore MarleyAyo and the Blacker the Brain and the Free Joy Experience. Go do all of that and then come back. Or listen to this and then go do all that and then listen to this all over again. The way Thea Monyeé runs her company is so important. The part I want to focus on today is how she builds her team within this company. In episode 27 of Shaping the Shift, she invited her team on to talk openly about how the company works. It's a glimpse into what's possible with a team. Before we dive in, let me share a little more about her. Thea Monyeé is a licensed therapist and Oya priestess in the Ifa tradition, committed to creating healing opportunities to Black and marginalized bodies through decolonization of joy, mental health, and pleasure. In addition to appearances on HBO, OWN, Fox Soul, and the Red Table Talks, she is the host of Shaping the Shift podcast, founder of MarleyAyo, and the Blacker the Brain, a mental health decolonizing campaign, conversation, and cohort, co-host of Dem Black Mamas podcast, and co-creator of the Free Joy Experience. She currently serves as a contributor on a policy working group supporting the objectives of the 2021 U.S. COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force. Thea Monyeé, welcome to Rebel Therapist.
This feels like home already. Rebel Therapist is like a title I would wear proudly.
Yes. So I already told everybody about episode 27 on Shaping the Shift. And so we're just going to dive right in.
So excited.
You have said that if a team member feels uncomfortable, it's your job to help them thrive. And the white model would say, this person has to go. And if you want control over your company, you need to have only the people there who are, perfectly going with your vision. So how have you held on to this other knowing?
That's such a good question because in the beginning, I'll be very honest. I last year was the first time I took time to really cultivate decolonized spaces, right? So we've talked about it through language, through theoretically, maybe workshopped it on individual basis, but actually, what would it look like in real life for people to live in a decolonized way is the question I think that began to birth things like the Blacker the Brain cohort, the Free Joy Experience, and even the workspace of MarleyAyo. And there's so much learning in that about the assumptions of what that is versus really getting on a cellular level clear about what that means. I think in the beginning I thought, and I think many people think it means the absence of whiteness. And that is basically step one. And I'm not even completely liking or enjoying that full language because I think it's more toxic whiteness, right? Because my friend Amelia of Corazon Counseling always tells us white people got their medicine too, right? So we don't want to eradicate the inherent goodness that can exist within whiteness by just abolishing it completely from the space. What it does require is peeling back the layers of what has attached itself to white culture, whether that's anxiety, control, power, white supremacy, that have infiltrated the culture itself. And now we have trouble identifying these things from the culture, right? Because there was a time that white culture existed in a way that was pretty similar to a lot of traditions and ancient traditions and African traditions and so on and so forth. So initially, just that blanket idea of just like removing it wasn't enough, because how do you remove it when all of us grow up in it? So even if it's not, we've all, like James Baldwin said, we've all been in the burning house. We've all inhaled the smoke. So then that was delusion number one. There's been many delusions, Annie. Delusion number two. Delusion number two was, if you free people, they will just immediately thrive, right? Here's the thing. I will open the gate. I will lift the veil. Yay, you're free. Go be free, right? And what I had was a bunch of people looking at me like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Reconciling that there were aspects of the controlling nature of white supremacy that they had grown to value, right? The structure, the somebody else telling me what to do so I don't have to do it or be responsible for it, that we developed this sort of Stockholm syndrome like love relationship with elements of white supremacy, right? So, you can tease that out a little bit more in that space. But for me, I was like, well, you're free. Go do whatever you've always wanted to do. Well, no one's ever asked me what I wanted to do. No one's ever centered my pleasure and my joy that way. I've never. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm falling back into old habits. I'm actually crawling back to it. It made me think of the stories about, and you can imagine this. You can physically put yourself in this space and imagine coming from generations of people who were forcibly enslaved, and then someone writing in telling you it's over, the war is over, the Emancipation Proclamation is signed, you're free, you're free. But I don't really know how to be free. It's been so long, right? So the assumption that people would know how to be free or immediately feel empowered to take that freedom and do something with it. Some do, but not everybody will, right? And so what is the support and the love and the patience, for that? So with my team in the work setting, it's been finding the balance between collective accountability, right? Empowerment, intentional healing, ongoing acknowledgement of work trauma, grad school trauma, education and K through 12 trauma, right? Acknowledging that while holding also this space of, in order for us to do the work we're here to do in the world, we need every leg of this table to stand. And so there's times when we have to be very open about what's holding us back. And as a team, we have to do two things. We have to validate that and thank them for that openness. And we have to assist them with creating a plan to overcome it, because we also can allow for any leg on this table to not be able to stand, because then everything we're building on top of that table falls, right? And so it's like, how do we can hold the individual, we can create this space, and there's this part of accountability to the community, right? And to self. I will also add this last thing. I'm sorry, this is a long-winded answer, but the trust in divine timing. At me as the head of the thing, learning to really trust down to the fibers, like practice that radical acceptance that Tara Brach talks about, and trust that if something isn't working out the way I wanted to work it out in the timing that I wanted to work it out, which I'm currently dealing with that right now, that if I really sit and trust, while acknowledging that that doesn't feel good, while acknowledging that I would prefer it be different, that it can open us up to something greater than I could have imagined, and holding the space for that. And sometimes I am the holder of that. And sometimes, I have beautiful team members who remind me of that. But I think the idea is that it has to be ever evolving, and there has to be enough openness to be able to speak the things and heal the things and then do the things.
Okay. And that makes me think of just always moving with the change.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh my God, I'm so lucky Oya is my mom. I'm so lucky Oya, who's over change and transformation, is my head, is my mother, because, that's what Shape and Shift is about, right? Like, how do we embrace change? How do we be like Olamina Oya, Parable of the Sower, Lauren Olamina Oya, right? That her, that being her religion, that God has changed, allowed her to move so differently through a world that was very undefined. But isn't all world undefined? It's because it's changing every day. We use the idea of definition to make us feel more comfortable with that. But the truth is, we'd we'd benefit more by just leaning into the idea that this is going to be new. And this is evolving. And even though I had this idea and this vision, it's evolving. Will I let it? Will I allow that? Right? Anybody who's written a novel or a poem knows you may start off with a certain inspiration, and you want to be true to that inspiration. And where can you allow for the evolution of that thing when it becomes its own entity, its own energy in the world, right? So yeah, it definitely is a lot of that. I'm so grateful she's my mom, because every day I have to be like, teach me to move with this and not to stay in the distrust that control has, this like cyclical relationship with distrust, right? Where the more you control, the more you distrust, the more you distrust, the more you need to control, and it's a cyclical thing, and really working on breaking out of that cycle, right?
In business, I feel like so much of what we hear in entrepreneurial spaces is so often about goal setting and control. And there's a tension between having goals and then the opportunities that show up that may be completely different than those goals. And that makes me think of Lauren Olamina too. Like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
she did have a vision, and then that carried her really far, and a lot of shit happened.
Yeah, and there was a point where she had to expand in order for with the vision, right? It is not incubated within her anymore. It's its own thing now, and you can expand with it, or you can continue to try to incubate it. But nothing's meant to be incubated forever. Yeah. So no, we one of the worst things you can say to me as a boss is they say, because I hate what they say.
Ah.
It bothers me so much. I don't want to be what they say. I don't care what they say. There are times, though, I'm learning to hear what they say without this like, I don't want to be, this resistance, to hear it, to sit with it, to examine if it feels good, if it doesn't feel good. When it comes to goal setting, I've learned a lot about that through Tamika Claybrook, who is like, I call her the auntie of MarleyAyo, right? Tia, Mike, Auntie Mike is what we call her sometimes. She's the head earth sign. I'm a fire sign, so she's head earth sign, Virgo. And so before her, I think I was afraid to set goals because there was this fear of not meeting them, and then this fear of failure and all these things that capitalism. And through her, which I've never done before, I now think in terms of quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. So I think it's again the intention we bring to the goal setting, right? The way I was introduced to goal setting was, you do these things. And here's the fact about goal setting: you will get further than you would have had you not set the goal.
Mhm.
You will, right? Because just by establishing it, you give yourself a target. I think, like everything else, the over attachment and the sense of value and the sense of self that we attach to the goal becomes the problem. So sometimes you have to remind yourself, what's the even bigger goal? If my even bigger goal is to reach people and to change the world through joy and pleasure, and this smaller goal and how I feel about it is impeding my joy, then I'm not meeting the bigger goal, which is the most important goal, right? And so goals are flexible and reevaluated, and progress is also something we have trouble because of the idea of goal setting being so hard and fast. we have a hard time acknowledging progress. If it doesn't look like a hit goal, it looks like failure, but progress. So what I tell my students sometimes is, we talk about morning routines. And let's say you're trying to do it every day. Well, the first week you didn't do it at all. And the second week you came in and I said, how'd it go? And you were like, oh, I only did it 3 times. Now I saw that as, oh, I did it 3 times more than the week before. You see that as I did it 4 times less than I should have. Right. And so that's the thing about goal setting. It depends on if you're looking at it through a progress and a progress recognition mindset, or as a pass fail, right? Because it could be very useful. I think the other thing about goals is the thing she's taught me about this quarterly model versus like an annual model. For me, I can tell you what we do is we work with the seasons. So we definitely work with a nature-based model and a divine timing model. So you didn't see a lot of me from like the time winter hit. Winter solstice hit. My spirit said we are fasting. The company's fasting, and it was this beautiful time to self-reflect as a company, to evaluate, to maximize, to care for, to nourish, to replenish, and then to reimagine.
And when you say the company's fasting, you
Mhm.
mean like metaphorically, like holding off from activities?
Not even metaphorically. Like, we really literally looked at it as, so when we think of what a fast, the purpose of a spiritual fast is I mean, not even just spiritual fast, like just for your body, the health benefits is, first, it gets rid of waste. Well, first it processes material, right? So here we are into 2020. We've created a lot of things. How we process that material, right? Where can we look at the areas, which is next in fasting, where we've been wasteful? Not intentionally, not with judgment, but because we didn't know any better, or because, we didn't have the downtime to look for better apps, better models, better platforms, better means of communication. We didn't get the chance to do that. So now let's look at what we can eliminate as waste in terms of energy for us, energy for individuals, energy for the company, currency, right? And then the third thing after you get through waste removal is cell repair. Like, what needs to be tended to? What needs to be fixed? Are we tired? Do we like working that way? Is that aligned with who we are, with our model? Let's look at our model again. Let's look at our mission statement again. Is it still accurate for us? And so all that beautiful cell repair got to happen. And so we did shift a lot of things, so many things, right? We've had an interesting relationship with social media. And I say we, though it's mostly me, because Sophia does not have my hang up. And Sophia's help is like basically our social media. She's our relationship person. We call her the plug. Anything dealing with relationships, whether it's outreach or whatever, it's going to go through Sophia. So she's always been like, social media. And we're just still trying to figure out our language and relationship with it. She's younger. She comes from a framework where it was like the thing, you must be doing it. And I came from the framework where like, fuck that, I don't have to do anything. And so in the middle, we're finding like, where can we enjoy this organism without feeling defined by it? And so I think we're figuring out some footing there. And, Sophia is like a beautiful example of why, you know, having people you can like disagree with or like be like push back, and she continues to come back like, but we got to do a little something, but we got to do, and I'm like, and so coming out of winter, I'm like, I'm gonna do more lives. She's like, thank you. But I think that, so that was the third level of the fast. That's the beautiful thing, fasting, that you get to do. So we've decided this year, we don't want to be doing a million things and promoting a million things. Like each year we want to pick like 5 things that we really care about, that we really want to be solid about, and talk about them all year in different ways. And really we're getting better at reusing content and repurposing things, like not creating the same thing 5 million ways, which is so wasteful of energy, time, and everything else, right? So we're excited. This is like the spring kickoff of a lot of these things. So we shall see where this all goes. But we plan to make it a practice. I think we'll probably do a fast every winter. So that's why I would say we roll with the seasons, right? So spring, we're coming up for air. You'll see us more. We're more visible. We're more active. Summer, we are in full Leo mode. Let us shine. Here we go. That's my season. So we're like out here, sun, everything. And then fall is this beautiful time where we've learned to appreciate that slowing down doesn't have to mean less currency. Slowing down means really more intentional sitting with what we've created through this spring, summer time, and then preparing for harvest, enjoying it, reflecting on how much we enjoy things, sharing that with the public. And then we go into winter where we kind of pull in.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's been great, Annie. I can't lie. I mean, I think our spiritual growth as a team, our emotional growth, everything is benefiting from that fast.
Mm. And now it's like, I see like with my plants, like there are these little leaves coming out. There's all this little like, oh, I didn't even know this one made it. And
Right.
it's
Oh my
like,
goodness. That's so true, Annie. I think I'm a plant person too. So
yeah,
I was like, you was about to be put in the compost pile and look at there, right? That's why I don't my husband be like, that thing is dead. I'd be like, no, we don't know till spring if it's
yeah.
actually dead. Yeah. Because it looks pretty dead, but that's exactly what that is.
In 1 minute, we're going to get right back to this conversation with Thea Monyeé. So I've been hiding something from you, and it's actually a huge part of my work. But up until now, I wasn't sharing it on this podcast. Rebel Therapist Mastermind is my program for healers and therapists and coaches who are committed to making their biggest impact. It's a small group for powerhouses who want to be with other powerhouses in mutual support. It's not for the brand new entrepreneur or for the person who wants to stay small. For 8 months, you're part of group calls with me and your cohort 2 times a month, co-working sprints every week, and unlimited one-on-one coaching with me. So let me tell you why you've never heard about this. I was only offering this to the inner circle of badass visionaries who had already been through my Create Your Program experience. So you only heard about it if you were a graduate of Create Your Program. And now I'm opening it up to other powerhouses as well. If you're a powerhouse, I want to nurture you in this amazing Rebel Therapist community. Head over to rebeltherapist.me/mastermind and apply. I also want to share something that my wonderful colleague, Sarah Bueno, is doing. She's the host of the podcast Conversations with a Wounded Healer, where I was a guest in January of 2021. Sarah is also the founder of Head Heart Therapy, where she's leading Head Heart Conversations. This is a web series for psychotherapists, and it's designed to invite your inner healer to the forefront of your personal and professional life. So this is all about therapists transforming ourselves so that we can support our clients' transformation. And I think we're ready to admit that that is the only way that we're going to be in this for the long haul. This is a 4-part series, and they're encouraging participants to learn about themselves and enhance their clinical skills. The second webinar in the series is happening on Friday, May 7th, 2021. It's called Trauma from the Individual to the Collective. Sarah Bueno and Rael Grayson are teaming up together to investigate how trauma affects a person internally and how that personal impact informs our collective experiences. There's going to be a special in-depth focus on racial trauma and how we begin to heal from the traumatic impact of white supremacy. And as a special thank you to you as a Rebel Therapist listener, you're going to get $10 off your order by using the code REBEL, that's capital REBEL, all caps, when you register. So to register and to learn all about it, go to tinyurl.com/HHconvos. So that's tinyurl.com/HHconvos. Okay, let's get back to Thea. When you have a spot on your team, when you're going to be bringing in a new team member, how does this happen? What happens for you to actually find this person? And then how do you choose this person or choose each other?
Oh, Annie, you're asking all the sweet questions today. My goodness. I've gone back and forth with, do I need a process, right? Because each new person, because of the kind of work we do, and because of who we are, nobody can just show up and do a job. It's like everything is a lesson. Everything is a chance to expand. Everything is a shift. Everything is change. And so it's hard for me to answer the how we get the person, because usually it comes up somehow pretty organically. And then we're like, that could feel really good. I could see the benefits of that. And then, we begin to kind of explore and onboard. With each person, though, with each lesson, we learn more about that onboarding process. And we haven't yet done a like open to the public, we're looking for this person type of call. Right now, it's all come from internal sort of referrals. But I definitely envision by 2022 it being more outward facing. And so this time of like internal referrals gives us time to refine that onboarding process for mutually, right? So what would feel better for the person coming in? What would feel better for us as a company, so that not that we don't have to learn the lessons, but maybe, I don't know. Here we are trying to avoid the lessons, but but make it smoother, right? So, um, a couple things that if you were to interview with us, you would definitely hear is we would tell you like our mantra, right? That we celebrate, we don't promote, we engage in conversation, we don't lecture. Like we have a whole list of it's on our website of like who we are, and so we'd go through each of those things with you to be really clear, because one thing I think that happens is people are like the ideal of us, and it feels like this really free liberal space, and it is. And even if we took it back and we're using these ancestral practices, and within a tribal society, everybody had to pull their weight. It was even more important because it's a smaller group, right? And so that's how we feel about it. So there is this piece that's like free, and by choice you show up with your best, right? And so how do we ensure that? So we don't have job descriptions. We really don't. We kind of have these evolving roles. So we do maybe have a rough idea of what we would need or why we're feeling like we need to bring in this other person, this other energy, and we'll kind of outline those things. And we'll ask, what on this list brings you joy and what absolutely doesn't, right? What are you like? It could never see an Excel spreadsheet again in my life and I will be perfectly fine. Or, what makes you like, oh my God, I'm so excited to do that. So we go through that without judgment. And it's not a disqualifier if there's something on there that you don't like to do, because telling us what you do like to do may help us think of a role for you that we weren't imagining when we first said, oh, we need a new person for this. Sometimes we've thought like Sophia came on and we really didn't have an idea. Like we're just like, we think you could be helpful, and we did have that conversation about what makes you joy. Also, though, I think we asked her, like in your wildest imagination, in your wildest dream, where will you be in 5 years? Because we're really big on people knowing that we don't require them to stay with us forever. That like actually we're not really doing our job unless they've like their dream is being funneled into as well. And our goal is for you to one day be our contemporary, and we'd be working together and we'd be able to be in partnership from your company to ours. So we like for people to have a vision beyond our company that is like that we can help nurture and remind them of while they're taking on roles, because we're kind of like PF Chang style, right? Family style, restaurant style. So we do pick up pieces from each other, and we do pick up, and you'll find yourself doing graphics. You'll find yourself, because we're a small operation. The other question that we've added is, what is your wellness routine? It's very important to us to bring on people who know how to take care of themselves. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to have accepted some level of responsibility for your own well-being. That's a big thing for me, because in almost every role I've had in my life, I've been some form of caretaker. And so it can be easy for me to fall into the trap of taking care of people. So for me to work well in this role, I need to know that you take responsibility for taking care of yourself. I can support that in different ways, but I can't take responsibility for it. And when I see someone who has none, I really struggle with like asking of them the work that I've paid for, but also pushing them to an emotional space that doesn't feel good for them or for me. And so that we really would love to hire people who have a, healthy morning routine or a healthy wellness routine or a sense of ritual to their life, because to Micah and I definitely do. And that's been the bedrock of us being able to move the way we do. And so we have Sophia, we're getting her on board with that too. But that will be a question moving forward as well.
God, I love that so much. I have only ever worked in the United States, but I have heard that in other places, part of the feedback that you get in some places is about your work-life balance or your self-care doesn't seem
Yeah.
to be quite working, and
Yeah.
that makes so much
It
fucking
much sense.
sense.
It does. It really does. And it saves you so much. Going back to a little bit of what you said before, the question of what if it's not working out or there's something difficult, and like, do you get rid of somebody? That really, I'm not saying that will never come up, but I'm saying that, like, even if it did, it wouldn't be a firing. I think what it would be is a mutual understanding that we're not both of us are struggling or suffering, and we can acknowledge that it's not because of lack of care and it's not because of lack of whatever. It's literally maybe just not the fit anymore, or maybe it never was. And so I think I'm more okay with that than I was before. I struggled with it really big time before, and I realized that it was a worth issue for me to continue to show up in a way, financially or otherwise, and not be getting what was agreed upon. So that was me saying, this person's feelings or this person's needs are bigger or more worthy than mine. And I don't want that either. I want us to both feel like our needs can be equitably maintained here. And if not, that there's agency here to say, we don't think this is working. Now it can't not be working because it's not my way. Now that's different. That's why we have a team, right? Like, the team helps me to see things through different lenses, and like, okay, it ain't got to work my way. Does it work? Right? Like, so that's it's not about that. It's more about, sometimes like the way we communicate or the pace of how we move, or, just the fundamental joy-centered strategies or belief system that a person may not be to that point in their life, or they may not think of it the same way. And so there's a lot of different reasons now that I realize it's okay to let go of relationships, and I'm not abandoning this person and they're not abandoning me. And it's not that. I think it's sometimes just okay to say things are temporary, and that it can be done in a healing way, as opposed to, this is not working. Because I've had those moments where, like, how do you fire somebody in a decolonized way? Like, and it wouldn't be a firing. And I didn't. And by not doing it, I learned so much. And it worked. And a lot of times it just kind of naturally works itself out when you're coming at it from that energy. But you need to have friends, especially if you're trying to build a business in this way I'm describing. It's not just easeful, it's joyful, but it's not easeful all the time, because it challenges your own internalized colonization. It makes you feel afraid sometimes. It makes you come face to face with your distrust. And so having people you can really talk to about that is important. For me, I have Akila S. Richards, and I have Saida Pepra, and I have Ebony Janice Moore, and I have Tamika, and they are all building something in this decolonized manner. Their businesses are also decolonized. So having them to talk to, and they're each like, especially the first ones I named, they're like, we're literally earth, wind, fire, and air. We're all the elements. So it's like, okay, I know I'm getting a balanced perspective, but it is important because you'll feel like you're running some sort of failed experiment. But business is a failed experiment. Capitalism is a failed experiment. I mean, that's how we figure out what things are, is through failed experimentation. And so there'll be many failed experiments on this journey of decolonizing businesses, and you just got to keep going.
It's like you've got this inner circle who knows you, sees you, understands you. And so you're not having to be in some kind of defensive stance as you work your way through it. You can be in total.
You can be, but you will still probably find yourself being defensive at times until they wear you down a little bit. It's you still, I mean, you can show up that way for sure and be safe. Do you always? Absolutely not. I've Ebony Janice had to call me out my name a couple times, and just to snap me back to reality. And it's a delicate dance because you want to validate each other's feelings and be like, So, I'm just trying to think, like, I don't even like the language of a failed experiment. It's just an experiment. It's like we don't even have to add the word failed to it, right? It's just an experiment. And experiments are really more about data collection and exploration than they are about whether or not they work. Because with experiments, whether or not it gives you the outcome you think of, there's always information.
Yeah. And you just keep going.
You just keep going with the new information. There's not a fail to it, right? So I wanted to correct that language.
Okay, there was a part of episode 27 that made me just fully start crying, which was when everybody shared their visions for the future of MarleyAyo.
Yeah.
And it was so big and it was so beautiful. And it was, if anything, needed to help me understand the potential of how you could build a team. Like, that was it. It was like, wow, like everybody here is holding a different vision that one person couldn't possibly hold on their own. So, what do you think makes that kind of group imagination possible?
Oh, such a beautiful question. That was one of my favorite episodes to record too, because just because your name is on the document doesn't mean it's just yours, right? It's not, MarleyAyo is not just mine by any stretch of the imagination. It is being raised by an entire family. You got big sister Sophia. You got several cousins who are out here helping out, and and you got Tia, Mike, right? So that it's I have to the way I'm thinking of it is like raising a child, and so all these hands that you can safely place the child in and know the child will be safe. Now, if you put it in, like with my kids, I knew when I dropped off from my mom's house, they were going to eat all the things I would not let them eat. That was just fact, right? And I still dropped them off at my mom's house, and let that experience exist within itself. And so sitting there that moment and just taking in the fact that these folks join me on this crazy ride / experiment adventure and have their own thoughts and their own energy around where we'll be, that in many ways superseded my own, was such a gift. So I think cultivating that group imagination is really about valuing roles without limiting roles. So at any point, anyone can bring up a concern about a direction we're taking. There's not only I could do that, or only, no, like I need to hear, or if I haven't heard someone speak, I'm like, what are you thinking? And I will take those recommendations because I know they care. And even on the moments when, like, say there's a deliverable that isn't hitting the target, I'm like, I'm irritated, I'm annoyed, it's a little frustrating. And what I go back to is, what I know though is that this person wants this to be as amazing as I do, and will 9 times out of 10 exceed my expectations. And part of the reason the deliverable might be late is because they're trying to do exactly that, right? As opposed to it being like, this is slowing down this and this is changing this, like being like just sitting in the trust, right? The radical acceptance. I'm fresh off that book. Now I'm reading A Complaint-Free World. I'm just going to be an ass kicking 2021. But sitting in the truth of, I am cared for, I am supported. I don't always have to be the oldest, the wisest, the most controlled, the most informed, the leader. I can be led. I can be supported. I can lead and be nourished, comforted, supported. And that piece is really been a beautiful way of learning how to exist within the space. Like really, like at the end of the day, I know they care as much as I do. And that's hard for people to admit because you want to feel like you have the most controlling invested interest, right? Some of my most uncomfortable moments are when their list of things to do exceeds mine. I'm like, oh, let me add a couple more so they don't think I'm over here slacking off, right? But that's that inner colonization. Really, it's like there will be days when mine's longer and there will be days when they're shorter. Who cares? Who's comparing? Like we're all just doing what we can to make this vision happen. I think Sophia's vision caught us all off guard. I mean, she had a full physical vision for this space. And ever since she said that, that's all I can think about. I imagine it, I visualize it, I see it's working there. I actively want land to build this space that she's talking about. And that was like from the youngest of us. Right. So that was just such a beautiful thing. If you don't invite that in, you really are missing out on a lot of joy, but also just that relief that you're not the only one carrying this idea. That if something were to happen to me, I don't think they'd let MarleyAyo just up and disappear.
Thea Monyeé, what are you excited about?
Oh my God. I told you it's just spring fling right around here. So we have so many things we're excited about. Okay, so we're launching a web home, which we wanted more than a website. We just wanted a place to like cuddle up and be intimate with people who are who want to work with us, right? So, and yeah, there's social media, but maybe 10% of the people that actually follow you are like engaged and want to be in deep relationship. And so for me, it was really important that that happened. And so this web home built by Tara Michelle Dixon, I think, again, the other thing is working with us, you will go beyond what you thought you could do. Like, I don't know if she's done half the things she's done working on this project, but you're working with Oya, and that's like going to demand expansion, right? So there's so many ways to engage that I'm so excited about. Like there's going to be a MarleyAyo library. So every month there'll be new lectures. We have a mini pod on there. We call it a podling. Feedling,
Yes.
podling, called The Get Right, which are like little 5-minute quick advice podcast episodes that are only on the site. We have original poetry that I haven't released publicly. And then we have like the Black of the Brain cohort that has its whole world on there. When you become a member, whether you're a shift shaper, shift shapers are people who donate $9 a month to the website. No, to the podcast specifically. When you enter any of these communities, there's like this whole general form, there's like a profile. So it's not just like you're here. It's almost like we've built our own internalized social media the way that we would like it to be, right? And so you can meet each other and you can learn about each other and you can engage, and there's community forums and you can share ideas. Even if you're like, just if you're a shift shaper, if you're a change maker, like these small little ways of contributing still give you that access. And then if you want to go deeper into the work, like you're really trying to learn the work and things like that, the library is available, the cohort's available. So that's like super duper exciting because we have a way to give more to you. And then you have a way to like receive it and interact with other people who are getting that. So that's what we've been working on really big.
So basically, all of the ways that someone could work with you, they can
Yeah.
access through this web home.
Absolutely. So if you want to be a part of our self-sustaining sponsorship community so that Shaping the Shift stays for us, by us, then you could just do the $9 a month and you still get access to the general forum. You want to do the library, you get access to the general forum and the library with all its content. That's really good for people because, I do a lot of lectures, but now we're housing them there. And even if I do them for other people. And so what's beautiful about that is that it allows for ongoing education to take place. There's also a course that I offer through there, pre-ordering my book, which comes out in May. I'm very excited about this book. It's called Blood and Bajareque, and you know how big I am on ancestral work. So it's really about lineage. And so it looks at my mom's lineage, my dad's lineage, but then also the spiritual lineage that was weaved the whole time that I didn't discover until this part of my life. But when you look back, you could see it was always threaded through both sides of the family, and seeing that weaving is like such a beautiful process. It took me a while to figure out what kind of book it is, because you know me, Annie, I don't like to be defined. So I was like, it's not a biomythography, it's not a memoir, it's not a novel, it's not a poetry book. What it really is, I realize it's a hymnal. And when you think about a hymnal outside of the melodies, you're just reading the words. It's like it's witnessing, right? It's witnessing spirit, it's witnessing yourself in your hardest moments, and then telling the story about how you overcame it. And so there's a piece in there actually called Hymnal, about my great grandmother who gave me her hymnal and put gold stars on these certain songs, and which songs were gold star worthy. And so it just made sense, like, oh, that's what this is. And I didn't realize that till a couple weeks ago. I was like, this is a hymnal. So super excited about that. Very sacred, very beautiful work. And then later on this year, we really are planning to take it to the next level and create a foundation, Ishegun Foundation for the Afro Future, where we really want to begin to invest in innovation and entrepreneurship in a decolonized way, and education, right? Like, we really want to create this mechanism where we see a community that is completely really built through this Ishegun model. Ishegun means victory. So the way I envision this, right, is if I could even pilot this idea in just a small community that is underserved, and take a couple entrepreneurs that are in existence but struggling, and some that are just starting, incubate them for a year, with some funding, but also with just all the things that they would need to know, right? The inner work, the outer work, on how to like run a thing. And then at the end of that process, or during that process, what we ask in return is that they apprentice young people in learning that trade, and learning that skill, and learning that business, and that they provide open days for the community to come in and learn about them and what they do and why they do it. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I can actually see that a whole city surviving off of that without anybody going through traditional education, higher education, because really from young, they will start to send their children to the places where their children naturally gravitate, because there'll be so many options in that space that you would just, if you want to be a baker, you would just spend time with the baker during the day, and then you would come back and share that with the community, what you learn, and then you're being apprenticed to take over when that baker passes on or wants to retire. And there never has to be this 8 hours away from your family, or 8 hours outside of community, or go away to college. You can go away, of course, you can do anything, you can travel. It's not meant to prevent that, but it's meant to just demonstrate that we can create an ecosystem that is very self-sustaining and thriving, from this Sankofa model of like reach back and get it, or each one teach one. And so if we can infuse that and start that up, we believe that's the blueprint for a new future.
My wife is a neon sign maker, and that's how everybody learns how to make neon signs is
Apprenticeship.
by just
Mhm.
apprenticeship, just being there, just being part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was how we all learned everything at a certain point.
Everything.
Everything. And
Yes.
having my kids home during this pandemic has taught me, I try not to look backwards, but this year has been the most beautiful year in terms of interpersonal relationship, and seeing who they are, what they really want to do, and supporting them in that, and trusting their natural instincts to move them in the right direction, and unlearning some of the things that formalized education has taught.
Yeah.
So we might as well go all the way with it then.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this.
My
Thank you for
pleasure.
this
Thank you. Oh,
conversation.
Annie, it was an easy yes. It was such an easy yes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about sharing it.
Me too. Now I'll loop back and share some takeaways that particularly stood out to me. Takeaway number 1, creating a joy-centered, decolonized team is a process. We've all been living in this white supremacist way of doing things, and it takes a whole process and time to learn and create a liberated way of running a company.
reconciling that there were aspects of the controlling nature of white supremacy that they had grown to value, right? The structure, the somebody else telling me what to do so I don't have to do it or be responsible for it.
Takeaway number 2. Thea and her team use goals, but they work to use those goals in service of a bigger vision. She works hard to stay out of the failure construct around not reaching a particular goal in a particular way.
Like everything else, the over-attachment and the sense of value and the sense of self that we attach to the goal becomes the problem. So sometimes you have to remind yourself, what's the even bigger goal?
Takeaway number 3. When they bring on a new team member, they pay attention to what brings this person joy. Rather than starting with a job description, they co-create what that role will be based on what they're needing and what brings this person joy. In that way, they open up to new opportunities that this new person may bring.
We do maybe have a rough idea of what we would need or why we're feeling like we need to bring in this other person, this other energy, and we'll kind of outline those things. And we'll ask, what on this list brings you joy and what absolutely doesn't.
So those are 3 of my takeaways. What stood out to you? Send me an email at info@coachingwithannie.com. Even better, include a voice memo in your email so I can share your voice on the pod. I'd love to hear what stood out to you in this conversation and what it's helping you rethink in your own business. You can find out more about everything Thea Monyeé and her team are doing at theamonyee.com. That's TheaMonyee.com. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please share it with your favorite therapist or healer. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.